Hello. Whoa, it's black. Hello, everybody. Hello, Stacey. Eh? Let me put this on. Happy Friday, everybody. Hi, Frank. Hello, Rockman. Hello, Magnus. Hello, hello. Are you guys ready for the spoopies? I'm sorry it took so long for me to start. My mom started talking to me. You know how it goes. And then like I'm just too nice to be like, Ma, I gotta go. I gotta go, man. Okay, I guess that was silent. There we go. Alright, got some spoopy music. Hi pipe. Hi pipe. Sup, dude? Did you drink some water? Yeah, I actually just did. I actually that's why I went upstairs. I went upstairs to steal my parents' water. Like their bottled water. And then my mom just wouldn't shut up talking to me. Yes, I've been drinking lots of water and I've been fasting and it sucks. I just started my fast. I ate a bunch of pizza. This is my cheat day. So I ate I ate a brownie and I ate some pizza. I ate some barbecue. Yeah, I try not to go overboard, but I've been really sticking to it this week, so I was starving. Parents' water equals our water. Indeed. Lord Jesus, it's a barbecue. Didn't have no shoes or nothing on. Lord Jesus. Thought somebody was barbecuing. Anyway. So yeah, how do I turn myself down? I wish I could turn my mic down. I'm way too loud. Does this make it louder? I don't know. How's the music? Beep, beep, beep. How's everybody today? You guys got any plans for this weekend? I don't have any plans. I'm gonna take it easy. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, I don't know how to turn the sound on my mic down. Yeesh. I plan to play the new Kirby game and go hiking. Ooh. You're gonna hike a big mountain? I love going hiking. Hiking and biking are like my thing. My things. Maybe buy a tux for my cousin's wedding. Ooh, is that she gonna look snazzy? Gonna put on the duds. Nice! That's always a nice feeling. Dun, 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 dun. Alright, I guess we'll start the read-along really soon because I want to finish it. It said that this book... So we're gonna read The Call of Cthulhu because it's supposed to be short and that's like the most well-known H.P. Lovecraft book, and a lot of his other books kind of build upon the lore that is set up in this book. So I figured we would start with this one, and if it goes well, if you guys enjoy it, then maybe we can read some others in the future. Yeah, anyway, so Call of Cthulhu. Google said that it's supposed to take like 2.5 hours to get through if you read 250 words per minute. I don't think I will be reading 250 words per minute because I'm not a very good narrator, and plus I will be I will be chatting with you guys about what's going on, so it might go on a bit longer than that, but hopefully it won't take more than like 4 hours to get through. I gotta cook and party tomorrow. You gotta cook and party? What the heck? Wait, whoa, what was that? I'll send love to stream. Thank you! um,
Lord Frank 1996 wants to see some love in chat.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you for the love in chat. I'll send you a pic. Of the tux. Yes, please do. That'd be so cool. Or like, did you mean a pic of the hiking and stuff? That'd be cool too. I love seeing nature pictures. So, what? You're going to party? Angel food and blueberries? Ooh. Is it your first time reading? Yes, I've never read this book. The only H.P. Lovecraft book I've read is called The Rats in the Walls, and I've talked about it before on stream. It's a little weird. If you guys, I mean, I thought it was interesting. I thought it was interesting, but it was really weird. The ending was shocking. I'll do both. Woo! You're done. Well, hope everybody had a really good week. I was super tired yesterday. I forgot what I did yesterday. Oh yes. I ended up going to a Bible study yesterday because my mom likes to drag me along for those things. It makes her happy, so I go sometimes. Yeah, I'm from the South, so like I'm in the Bible Belt. It's like it's embedded in people's souls to be followers of the Bible. It's pretty common around here. And my mother's not. She goes along with that. I couldn't think of the word I was trying to say. It's a you did what? Wait, then what did what did I ask? Bible study. Ah, yes, my parents used to take me to church. Unfortunately, they have drawings I could color in. Yeah, church was fun as a kid because like you got to color and do crafts and like play with the other kids. It was fun. I liked going when I was younger. And I don't mind going to church now. I think it's nice to get active in your community, and I think faith and spirituality is very important. So even if I myself might not 100% align with what is being taught or preached or whatever, I do have some kind of like aspect or element to it that I can relate to, or I think it's good. Spirituality, it's very important. All the church food. Yeah, there's food last night. I couldn't eat it because I had already started my fast. Oh man. It's good to have something that gives you hope and peace. Yeah. I don't really know what I would associate myself with. Like, I'm kind of like a... I mean, I guess most people don't say this on stream, but I'm kind of like a... I don't know. I want to say kind of like a Buddhist Christian type. But it's more like I don't really follow any certain thing. I mean, I believe in stuff, but I don't like fully devote myself, which probably isn't good. I don't know. I got some black coffee because I can't have coffee. I can't have any sugar during my fast, but I can have black coffee and water. It's okay. I got Starbucks coffee at least. Not juice. If Macho was here, he'd say, "Juice gives me peace." Wait, juice? Not juice. Junie. Junie gives me peace. Macho is so sweet. In the future, I'm planning to buy myself an Oculus. Oh, you totally should. You totally should. Frank does always join in VR chat. He plays a lot of VR chat, and he has joined both times that we've done it. But I think he plays on PC. I'll take your pics. Yeah, I want to do VR chat again. Probably on the 8th. I'm thinking the 8th. If nothing else comes up, I want to do it on the 8th. So not next Friday, but the Friday after that. I absolutely love being in VR chat with you guys. It's so freaking fun. It is always a blast. And like, I tell myself going in, it's like, oh, I'm just gonna be in VR for a couple hours, and then I end up staying up till like freaking 3 a.m. It's crazy. Could hang up for my pre-B day. Wait, when's your B day? I'm trying to drag Jazzy with us. Wait, to VR chat or to your B day? What is Yashi gonna go? The 10th of April. Oh. I was like, is Yashi gonna go to your birthday? Oh, Rayo messaged me the other day. It was really nice. I haven't talked to Rayo in a really long time. But, we're really good friends, regardless of how often we talk, and that's really nice. We just pick up right where we left off, like it's been no time at all. that stinky Bork. "10th of April. Okay, so that is on a Sunday. Well, I hope you have a great Sunday. If you plan on doing anything, please let me know. And I'll try to join in. Like if you're streaming or whatnot. Sashi does stream, by the way. He is also a streamer. You should go check him out. He's amazing. He's like he is a rock in the Uwu Foundation for sure. She hella busy, but we might be able to get her. I don't know. I haven't really talked to Yashi in like a really, really long time. It's stinky. Because she's really nice. Journey stream! Okay! How are you? Thanks for stopping in. We haven't started reading yet. We probably should. Okay, are you guys ready? Are you guys ready to start reading? Because we have a really long way to go. It's gonna be an ASMR stream. Well, sort of. Because it's just gonna be reading. Oh my god, Blue Star! Hi! Sashi, can you shout out Blue Star, please? Blue Star! Blue, thank you so much for stopping in! You said no? No! What is this? Mario Kart 8, let's go! Thanks for stopping in, Blue! How was your Friday? We're just about to start reading a horror thing. A horror book. We're gonna read Call of Cthulhu. Okay, I gotta get this ready. Let's see. Dong dong dong. Oh my god, is that a friggin' I think that's a spider. Is it like a spider or a mosquito? I don't know. Okay. Excuse me. Okey pokey. I'm gonna just get myself situated over here. Can't really tell where I am. Hold on. I'm like hiding now. Okay, hold on. Okay. The music got really quiet. Alright, gotta pull out my book. My book. It's a book. Don't you ever interrupt me while I'm reading a book. My girl came in with some food that she cooked. I'm reading a book, girl. I'm reading a book. Don't you ever interrupt me while I'm reading a book. Oh, I love that song. That's a good one. Okay. Get chat up. Move chat. And here we go. Alright. This is the book. I have like this up here so you guys can have a visualization of the words and what's going on, and so you can make fun of me when I say things wrong. Might make it a little bit bigger. Here we go. Dang, the music got so quiet. What the heck? It's so quiet. I can't hear it, man. It's quiet. Alright. Enjoy today's audiobook from Twitch. Friday's been pretty good. Just worked on a video and doing some writing. Oh, nice. Hope you have the creative juices flowing. It's scary time. I think I might have to have that one on. I think I might have that one on my bookshelf. Oh, really? That's cool. I got this through Kindle. I actually got it through my library. I use a really cool app. I don't know if you guys might have it, but my library has this app called Libby, Libby, and you download it on your phone, and you can check out all kinds of like books. You can even get magazine subscriptions, and you can read it for free all on that app as long as your library has it in their catalog. You can read it, and some like they even have like more popular books. I actually read recently, what is it called? I read that book that's been super hyped up by like, I think her name's like Hoover or something. It was called Verity. Yeah, I read Verity. And what is that? Strive! Oh my god! Yeah, I read Verity for free. I had to wait for like a month to get it, but yeah. Oh my god, Strive, thank you for the 14 months! Holy crap, dude! I think you might be like one of the longest standing subscribers I have. Thank you so much. Ginny ASMR reading, let's go. Thank you, thank you. Yay, you came just in time. We haven't even started. I haven't read one single word. My cat nearly turned off my PC on me. Oh no, that would suck. I hope you back up your stuff. Yeah. Daisy. Okay, are you guys ready? Here we go. Okay, the music got so much louder. Alright. We start off with the Call of Cthulhu. Of such great powers or beings, there may be conceivably a survival of a hugely remote period when consciousness was manifested, perhaps, in shapes and forms long since withdrawn before the tide of advancing humanity. Forms of which poetry and legend alone have caught a flying memory and called them gods, monsters, mythical beings of all sorts and kinds. That was by some Algernon Blackwood. Some junk like that. Alright, here we go. Chapter 1. Horror in the Clay. I hate words like that. Horror. Or like rural. Rural. I live out in the rural country. I hate like too many R's in a word. Disgusting. Alright. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity. And it was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little. But someday, the piecing together of dissociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality, and of our frightful position therein, that we shall either go mad from the revelation, or flee from the deadly light into the peace and safety of a new dark age. that Algernon is such a rapscallion. Too many R's going on. Sure, everything he said won't totally happen later in the story. Oh no! Spoopy. Okay, don't make fun of me if I don't understand this, because it seems hard. What is a theosophist? Theosophist. Have guessed at the awesome grandeur of the cosmic cycle wherein our world and human race form transient incidents. They have hinted at strange survivals in terms which would freeze the blood, if not masked by a bland optimism. But it is not from them that there came the single glimpse of forbidden eons, which chills me when I think of it, and maddens me when I dream of it. That glimpse, like all dread glimpses of the truth, flashed out from an accident piercing together of separated things. In this case, an old newspaper item, and the notes of a dead professor. I hope that no one else will accomplish this piecing out. Certainly, if I live, I shall never knowingly supply a link in so hideous a chain. I think that the professor too intended to keep silent regarding the part he knew, and that he would have destroyed his notes had not sudden death seized him. My knowledge of the thing began in the thing. My knowledge of the thing in the winter of 1926 through 27 with the death of my grand-uncle George Gamel Angel, Professor Emeritus of Semitic Languages in Brown University, Providence, Rhode Island. Professor Angel was widely known as an authority on ancient inscriptions and had frequently been resorted to by the heads of prominent museums, so that his passing at the age of 92 may be recalled by many. Locally, interest was intensified by the obscurity of the cause of death. The professor had been stricken whilst returning from the Newport boat, falling suddenly, as witnesses said, after having been jostled by a nautical-looking... I'm not saying that word. I also read that these books might be a little racist, so I'll just skip over any racist words. A nautical-looking African-American who had come from one of the strange dark courts on the precipitous hillside which formed a shortcut from the waterfront to the deceased's home in William Street. Physicians were unable to find any visible disorder, but concluded after perplexed debate that some obscure lesion of the heart, induced by the brisk ascent of so steep a hill by so elderly a man, was responsible for his end. At the time, I saw no reason to dissent from this dictum, but laterally I am inclined to wonder, and more than wonder. This paragraph throwing all the curveballs, I know, right? Oh, goodness. As my grand-uncle's heir and executor, for he died a childless widower, I was expected to go over his papers with some thoroughness, and for that purpose moved his entire set of files and boxes to my quarters in Boston. Much of the material which I correlated will be later published by the American Archaeological Society, but there was one box which I found exceedingly puzzling, and which I felt much averse from showing to other eyes. It had been locked, and I did not find the key till it occurred to me to examine the personal ring which the professor carried always in his pocket. Then, indeed, I succeeded in opening it, but when I did so, seemed only to be confronted by a greater and more closely locked barrier. For what could be the meaning of this strange clay bas relief and the disjointed jottings, ramblings, and cuttings which I found, had my uncle in his latter years come credulous of the most superficial impostures? I resolved to search out the eccentric sculptor responsible for this apparent disturbance of an old man's peace of mind. What is a bas relief? The bas relief was a rough rectangle less than an a rough rectangle less than an inch thick and about 5 by 6 inches in area, obviously of modern origin. Its designs, however, were far from modern in atmosphere and suggestion, for although the vagaries of Cubism and Futurism are many and wild, they do not often reproduce that cryptic regularity which lurks in prehistoric writing. And writing of some kind the bulk of these designs seems certainly to be, though my memory, despite much familiarity with the papers and the collections of my uncle, failed in any way to identify this particular species, or even hint at its remotest affiliations. Bas relief is a sculpture? Oh. Coffee's getting cold. It's a 2D sculpture. Above these apparent hieroglyphics was a figure of evidently pictorial intent, though its impressionistic execution forbade a very clear idea of its nature. It seemed to be a sort of monster, or symbol representing a monster, of a form which only a diseased fancy could conceive. If I say that my somewhat extravagant imagination yielded simultaneous pictures of an octopus, a dragon, and a human caricature, I shall not be unfaithful to the spirit of the thing. A pulpy, tentacled head surmounted a grotesque and scaly body with rudimentary wings. But it was the general outline of the whole which made it most shockingly frightful. Behind the figure was a vague suggestion of a cyclopean architectural background. Think of it like those Egyptian art wall. Oh, I see. The writing accompanying this oddity was aside from a stack of press cuttings in Professor Engel's most recent hand, and made no pretense to literary style. What seemed to be the main document was headed Cthulu Cult, in characters painstakingly printed to avoid the erroneous reading of a word so unheard of. This manuscript was divided into 2 sections, the first of which was headed 1925, Dream and Dreamwork of H.A. Wilcox, 7 Thomas Street, Providence, Rhode Island, and the second, Narrative of Inspector John R. LaGrasse, 121 Bienville Street, New Orleans, Louisiana, at 1908 AAS MTG, whatever that means. Notes on the same and Professor Webb's account. Oh, I didn't finish it. The other manuscript papers were all brief notes, some of them accounts of the other strange dreams of different persons, some of them citations from theosophical books and magazines, notably W. Scott Eliot's Atlantis and the Lost Lemuria. Ooh, that's interesting. And the rest comments on long-surviving secret societies and hidden cults, with references to passages in such mythological and anthropological source books as Fraser's Golden Bough and Miss Murray's Witch Cults. And I have my alarm going off. One moment. With references to passages in such mythological and I already read that part. Anthropological sources such as Fraser's Golden Bough and Miss Murray's Witch Cults in Western Europe. The cuttings largely alluded to outre mental illness and outbreaks of group folly or mania in the spring of 1925. Imagine group folly? Absurd. The first half of the principal manuscript told a very peculiar tale. It appears that on March 1st, 1925, a thin, dark young man of neurotic and excited aspect had called upon Professor Engel bearing the singular clay bas-relief, which was then exceedingly damp and fresh. His card bore the name of Henry Anthony Wilcox, and my uncle had recognized him as the youngest son of an excellent family slightly known to him, who had latterly been studying sculpture at Rhode Island School of Design and living alone at Fleur de Lis building near Institution. Wilcox was a precocious youth of known genius, but great eccentricity, that's it, and had from childhood excited attention through the strange stories and odd dreams he was in the habit of relating. He called himself psychiacally hypersensitive. What the heck? But the staid folk of the ancient commercial city dismissed him as merely strange. Never mingling much with his kind, he had dropped gradually from social visibility, and was now known only to a small group of aesthetes, I don't know these words, from other towns, other papes from other towns. Even the Providence Art Club, anxious to preserve its conservatism, had found him quite hopeless. On the occasion of the visit round the professor's manuscript, the sculptor abruptly asked for the benefit of his host's archaeological knowledge in identifying the hieroglyphics on the bas-relief. He spoke in a dreamy, stilted manner, which suggested pose and alienated sympathy, and my uncle showed some sharpness in replying, for the conspicuous freshness of the tablet implied kinship with anything but archaeology. Young Wilcox's rejoinder, which impressed my uncle enough to make him recall and record it in verbatim, was of a fantastically poetic cast, which must have been typified his whole conversation, and which I have since found highly characteristic of him. He said, "It is new indeed, for I made it last night in a dream of strange cities, and dreams are older than brooding Tyre, or Tyre, or the contemplated Sphinx, or the garden girdled Babylon." At least I know those words. It was then that he began that rambling tale which suddenly played upon a sleeping memory and won the fevered interest of my uncle. There had been a slight earthquake tremor the night before, the most considerable felt in New England for some years, and Wilcox's imagination had been keenly affected. Upon retiring, he had had an unprecedented dream of a great cyclopean cities of Titan blocks and sky-flung monoliths, all dripping with green ooze and sinister with latent horror. Hieroglyphics had covered the walls and pillars, and from some undetermined point below came a voice that was not a voice, a chaotic sensation which only fancy could transmute into sound, but which he attempted to render by almost unpronounceable jumble of letters. Cthulu. I guess that's how you pronounce that. Take a drink. This verbal jumble was the key to the recollection which excited and disturbed Professor Engel. He questioned the sculptor with scientific minuteness and studied with almost frantic intensity the bas-relief on which the youth had found himself working, chilled and clad only in his night clothes, when waking had stolen... I'm stumbling over my words already. When waking had stolen bewilderingly over him. My uncle blamed his old age. Wilcox afterwards said, for his slowness in recognizing both hieroglyphics and pictorial design. Many of his questions seemed highly out of place to his visitor, especially those which tried to connect the latter with strange cults or societies, and Wilcox could not understand the repeated promises of silence which he was offered in exchange for an admission of membership in some widespread mystical or paganly religious body. When Professor Engel became convinced that the sculptor was indeed ignorant of any cult or system of cryptic lore, he besieged his visitor with demands for future reports of dreams. This bore regular fruit, for after the first interview the manuscript records daily calls with the young man, during which he related startling fragments of nocturnal imagery, whose burden was always some terrible cyclopean vista of a dark and dripping stone, with a subterranean voice or intelligence shouting monotonously, and enigmatical sense impacts uninscribable save as gibberish. The two sounds most frequently repeated are those rendered by the letters Cthulu and Relie. On March 23rd, the manuscript continued. Wilcox failed to appear, and inquiries at his quarters revealed that he had been stricken with an obscure sort of fever and taken to the home of his family in Waterman Street. He had cried out in the night, arousing several other artists in the building, and had manifested since then only alternations of unconsciousness and delirium. My uncle at once telephoned the family, and from that time forward kept close the watch of the case, calling often at Thayer Street office of Dr. Toby, whom he learned to be in charge. The youth's febrile mind apparently was dwelling on the strange things, and the doctor shuddered now and then as he spoke of them. They included not only a repetition of what he had formerly dreamed, but he touched wildly on a gigantic thing miles high which walked or lumbered about. He had no time fully described this object, but occasionally frantic words, as repeated by Dr. Toby, convinced the professor that it must be identical with the nameless monstrosity he had sought to depict in his dream sculpture. Reference to this object, the doctor added, was invariably a prelude to the young man's subsidence in lethargy. His temperature, oddly enough, was not great above normal, but the whole condition was otherwise such as to suggest true fever rather than mental disorder. This is hard to read. And let me know if the music is too loud. It might be a bit too loud. Okay. On April 2nd, at about 3 p.m., every trace of Wilcox's malady suddenly ceased. He sat upright in bed, astonished to find himself at home and completely ignorant of what had happened in the dream or reality since the night of March 22nd. Pronounced well by his physician, he returned to his quarters in 3 days. But to Professor Engel, he was of no further assistance. All traces of strange dreaming had vanished with his recovery, and my uncle kept no record of his night thoughts after a week of pointless and irrelevant accounts of thoroughly usual visions. Here the first part of the manuscript ended, but references to certain of the scattered notes gave me much material for thought. So much, in fact, that only the ingrained skepticism then forming my philosophy can account for my continued distrust of the artist. The notes in question were those descriptive of the dreams of various persons covering the same period as that in which young Wilcox had had his strange visitations. My uncle, it seems, had quickly instituted a prodigiously far-flung body of inquiries amongst nearly all the friends whom he could question without impertinence, asking for nightly reports of their dreams and the dates of any notable visions for some time past. The reception of his request seems to have been varied, but he must, at the very least, have received more responses than any ordinary man could have handled without a secretary. This original correspondence was not preserved, but his notes formed a thorough and really significant digest. Average people in society and business, New England's traditional salt of the earth, gave an almost completely negative result, though scattered cases of uneasy but formless nocturnal impressions appear here and there, always between March 23rd and April 2nd, the period of young Wilcox's delirium. Scientific men were little more affected, though 4 cases of vague description suggest fugitive glimpses of strange landscapes, and in one case there is mentioned a dread of something abnormal. It was from the artists and poets that the pertinent answers came, and I know that panic would have broken loose had they been able to compare notes. As it was, lacking their original letters, I half suspected the compiler of having asked leading questions, or of having edited the correspondence in corroboration of what he had latently resolved to see. That is why I continued to feel that Wilcox, somehow cognizant of the old data which my uncle had possessed, had been imposing on the veteran scientist. These responses from Aesthetes told a disturbing tale. From February 28th to April 2nd, a large proportion of them had dreamed very bizarre things. The intensity of the dreams became immeasurably the stronger during the period of the sculptor's delirium. Over a fourth of those who had reported anything reported scenes and half-sounds, not unlike those which Wilcox had described. And some of the dreamers confessed acute fear of the gigantic nameless thing visible toward the last. One case, which the note describes the emphasis, was very sad. The subject, a widely known architect with leanings toward theosophy and occultism, went violently insane on the date of young Wilcox's seizure, and expired several months later after incessant screamings to be saved from some escaped denizen of hell. Had my uncle referred to these cases by name instead of merely by number, I should have attempted some corroboration and personal investigation, but as it was, I succeeded in tracing down only a few. All of these, however, bore out the notes in full. I have often wondered if all the objects of the professor's questioning felt as puzzled as did this fraction. It is well that no explanation shall ever reach them. The press cuttings, as I have intimated? The press cuttings, as I have intimated, touched on cases of panic, mania, and eccentricity during the given period. Professor Engel must have employed a cutting bureau, for the number of extracts was tremendous, and the sources scattered throughout the globe. Here was a nocturnal suicide in London, where a lone sleeper had leaped from a window after a shocking cry. Here likewise, a rambling letter to the editor of a paper in South America, where a fanatic deduces a dire future from visions he has seen. A dispatch from California describes a theosophist colony as donning white robes on Mars for some glorious fulfillment which never arrives, whilst items from India speak guardedly of serious native unrest toward the end of March. Oh my god. Voodoo gatherings multiply in Haiti, and African outposts report ominous mutterings. American officers in the Philippines find certain tribes bothersome about this time, and New York policemen are mobbed by hysterical Levantines on the night of March 22nd through the 23rd. The west of Ireland, too, is full of wild rumor and legendary, and a fantastic painter named Ardois Bonnois hangs a blasphemous dream landscape in the Paris Spring Salon of 1926. And so numerous are the recorded troubles in insane asylums that only a miracle can have stopped the medical fraternity from noting strange parallelisms and drawing mystified conclusions. This is scary music. A weird bunch of cuttings, all told. And I can at this date scarcely envisage the callous rationalism with which I set them aside. But I was then convinced that young Wilcox had known of the older matters mentioned by the professor. Oh god, I think I might have to pass on this song. That was too freaking scary, dude. I'm gonna poop my pants. Okay. So, we are done with chapter 1. I don't know how many chapters there are. We're 22% through the book. Oh wait, no we're not. That's through the whole book. Spoopy! Alright, so it seems like in chapter 1, there's people having crazy dreams. Especially somebody that this dude's uncle worked with. And so he found out his uncle was investigating these strange dreams, and then that dude had died or something, and there's a bunch of weird stuff going on around the world at the same time. And it depicts like a octopus dragon dude with wings and them just saying a bunch of gibberish and worshipping something. That's basically what I got out of that. A very, very, very brief description. Anyway, this dude's looking into it. He's like, very interesting. Omoshiroi desu ne. Sounds like a Friday night. Yeah, I need my flashlight. Uncle investigator, weird dreams. We need some booze. I can't have the booze. I had one truly earlier. I'm just drinking my black ass coffee. And grow some hair on my chest. Okay. Say less. I drank all my booze, dudes. I say that, but I have -5 knowledge of alcohol minus soju. Wow. That's good. Alcohol bad. That's good alcohol bad. Anyway. Guys, how's the music? Is it too loud? Mango beer? The music stopped when I asked that. Alright, there we go. The suspense. Music's fine. Cool. Alright. Okay. Just finished my cold coffee. Getting my water ready. Hi, Fears! How are you? We just finished chapter 1 of Call of Cthulhu. About to move on to chapter 2. Please don't mind my mispronunciation of things. This is like a level over my reading level. I don't know what some of these words mean. I don't know what a lot of these words mean. And I'm not a good reader, so I'm sorry about that. So I hope you can understand what I'm saying and you can understand the story and yeah. You're doing way better than I would. Okay, so basically what had happened was in chapter 1, this guy, his uncle had just died, and his uncle was a professor, and he just inherited his uncle's stuffs, and he was looking through his uncle's work in his office, and he found that his uncle was working with some guy, some other scientist dude or something, and he was having some really weird dreams, and dreams about a tentacle dragon winged thing, and cultists, and weird stuff, and ramblings. And then apparently during this period of time, a bunch of other people were having like the same thing and experienced the same thing all over the world. And then these people died suddenly, and it was weird. And so now he's interested, and he's trying to figure it out. Playing Minecraft with some buddies, so I'm thinking, okay, I'm just reading, so nothing too interesting. Unless you like story time. Alright, here we go. Actually, I'm gonna drink some more water. I'm glad you think so, Strive. I'm glad you can understand. I always wanted to hear this tale. Me too! Me too. Alright, chapter 2. The Tale of Inspector Legrassi. Legrassi from Degrassi. Okay. So, the older matters which had made the sculptor's dream and bas-relief so significant to my uncle formed the subject of the second half of this long manuscript. Once before, it appears, Professor Engel had seen the hellish outlines of this nameless monstrosity, puzzled over the unknown hieroglyphics, and heard the ominous syllables which can be rendered only as Cthulu. And all this in so stirring and horrible a connection that it is small wonder he pursued young Wilcox with queries and demands for data. This earlier experience had come in 1908, 17 years before, when the American Archaeological Society held its annual meeting in St. Louis. Professor Engel had befitted one of his authority and attainments, had a prominent part in all the deliberations, and was one of the first to be approached by several outsiders who took advantage of the convocation to offer questions for correct answering and problems for expert solution. The chief of these outsiders, and in a short time the focus of interest for the entire meeting, was a commonplace-looking middle-aged man who had traveled all the way from New Orleans for certain special information unobtainable from any local source. His name was John Raymond Legrassi, and he was by profession an inspector of police. With him he bore the subject of his visit a grotesque, repulsive, and apparently very ancient stone statuette whose origin he was at a loss to determine. It must not be fancied that Inspector Legrassi had the least interest in archaeology. On the contrary, his wish for enlightenment was prompted by purely professional considerations. The statuette, idol, fetish, or whatever the heck it was, had been captured some months before in the wooded swamps south of New Orleans during a raid on a supposed voodoo meeting, and so singular and hideous were the rites connected with it that the police could not but realize that they had stumbled on a dark cult totally unknown to them, and infinitely more diabolic than even the blackest of the African voodoo circles. Of its origin, apart from the erratic and unbelievable tales extorted from the captured members, absolutely nothing was to be discovered. Hence the anxiety of the police for any antiquarian lore which might help them place the frightful symbol and through it track down the cult to its fountainhead. Inspector Legrassi was scarcely prepared for the sensation which his offering created. One sight of the thing had been enough to throw the assembled men of science into a state of tense excitement. and they lost no time in crowding around him to gaze at the diminutive figure whose utter strangeness and air of genuinely abysmal antiquity hinted so potently at unopened and archaic vistas. No recognized school of sculpture had animated this terrible object, yet centuries and even thousands of years seemed recorded in its dim and greenish surface of unplaceable stone. The figure, which was finally passed slowly from man to man for close and careful study, was between 7 and 8 inches in height and of exquisitely artistic workmanship. It represented a monster of vaguely anthropoid outline, with an octopus-like head whose face was a mass of feelers, a scaly, rubbery-looking body, prodigious claws on the hind and forefeet, and long, narrow wings behind. This thing, which seemed instinct with a fearsome and unnatural malignancy, was of a somewhat bloated corpulence, and squatted evilly on a rectangular block or pedestal covered with undecipherable characters. The tips of the wings touched the back of the block. The seat occupied the center, whilst the long and curved claws of the doubled-up crouching hind legs gripped the front edge and extended a quarter of the way down toward the bottom of the pedestal. The cephalopod head was bent forward, so that the ends of the facial feelers brushed the backs of the huge forepaws which clasped the croucher's elevated knees. The aspect of the whole was abnormally lifelike, and the more subtly fearful because its source was so totally unknown. Its vast, awesome, and incalculable age was unmistakable, yet not one link did it show with any other known type of art belonging to civilization's youth, or indeed at any other time. Totally separate and apart, its very material was a mystery. For the soapy greenish-black stone with its golden or iridescent flecks and striations resembled nothing familiar to geology or mineralogy. Mineralogy. The characters along the base were equally baffling, and no member present, despite a representation of half the world's expert learning in this field, could form the least notion of even the remotest linguistic kinship. They, like the subject and material, belonged to something horribly remote and distinct from mankind as we know it. Something frightfully suggestive of old and unhallowed cycles of life in which our world and our conceptions have no part. And yet, as the members severally shook their heads and confessed defeat at the inspector's problem, there was one man in that gathering who suspected a touch of bizarre familiarity in the monstrous shape and writing, and who presently told with some diffidence of the odd trifle he knew. This person was the late William Channing Webb, professor of anthropology in Princeton University, and an explorer of no slight note. Professor Webb had been engaged 48 years before in a tour of Greenland and Iceland in search of some runic inscriptions which he failed to unearth. And whilst high up on the West Greenland coast had encountered a singular tribe or cult of degenerate Eskimos, whose religion, a curious form of devil worship, chilled him with its deliberate bloodthirstiness and repulsiveness. It was a faith of which other Eskimos knew very little, and which they mentioned only with shudders, saying that it had come from some horribly ancient eons before ever the world was made. Besides the nameless rites and human sacrifices, there were certain queer hereditary rituals addressed to a supreme elder devil or Tornask. Tornasuk. Tornasuk. I don't know how to say that. And of this Professor Webb had taken a careful phonetic copy from an aged Angakok, or wizard priest, expressing the sounds in Roman letters as best we know how. But just now of prime significance was the fetish which this cult had cherished, and around which they danced when the aurora leaped high over the ice cliffs. It was, the professor stated, a very crude bas-relief of stone, comprising a hideous picture and some cryptic writing. As far as he could tell, it was a rough parallel in all essential features of the bestial thing now lying before the meeting. These data, received with suspense and astonishment by the assembled members, proved doubly exciting to Inspector Legrassi. And he began at once to ply his informant with questions. Having noted and copied an oral ritual among the swamp cult worshippers his men had arrested, he besought the professor to remember as best as he might the syllables taken down amongst the diabolist Eskimos. There then followed an exhaustive comparison of details, and a moment of really odd silence when both detective and scientist agreed on the virtual identity of the phrase common to two hellish rituals so many worlds of a distance apart. What in substance both the Eskimo wizards and the Louisiana swamp priests had chanted to their kindred idols was something very much like this. The word divisions being guessed at from traditional breaks in the phrase, as chanted aloud. I can't say that. Legrassi had 1 point in advance of Professor Webb, for several among his mongrel prisoners had repeated to him what other older celebrants had told them the words meant. This text, as given, ran something like this. Blah, 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 in this house is a really dead Cthulhu waste of dreaming. And now, in response to a general urgent demand, Inspector Legrassi related as fully as possible his experience with the swamp worshippers. Telling a story to which I could see my uncle attach profound significance. I pause at the weirdest times. Okay, I'm gonna read that again. In response to a general urgent demand, Inspector Legrassi related as fully as possible his experience with the swamp worshippers, telling a story to which I could see my uncle attached a profound significance. Alright, that sounded better. It savored of the wildest dreams of myth-maker and theosophist, and disclosed an astonishing degree of cosmic imagination among such half-castes and pariahs as might be least expected to possess it. On November 1st, 1907, there had come to New Orleans There had come to New Orleans police a frantic summons from the swamp and lagoon country to the south. The squatters, what? Most primitive but good-natured descendants of Lafitte's men were in the grip of a stark terror from an unknown thing which had stolen upon them in the night. It was voodoo, apparently, but voodoo of a more terrible sort than they had ever known, and some of their women and children had disappeared since the malevolent tom-tom had begun its incessant beating far within the black-haunted woods where no dweller ventured. There were insane shouts and harrowing screams, soul-chilling chants and dancing devil flames, and the frightened messenger added the people could stand no more. So a body of 20 police, filling 2 carriages and an automobile, has set out in the late afternoon with the shivering squatter as a guide. The shivering squatter. Squatter. At the end of the passable road they alighted, and for many miles splashed in silence through the terrible cypress woods, where day never came. Ugly roots and malignant hanging nooses of Spanish moss beset them, and now and then a pile of dank stones, or fragments of a rotting wall intensified by its hint of morbid habitation, a depression which every malformed tree and every fungus islet combined to create. Sounds amazing. At length, the squatter settlement, a miserable huddle of huts, hove in sight. Hysterical dwellers ran out to cluster around the group of bobbing lanterns. The muffled beat of tom-toms was now faintly audible far, far ahead, and a curdling shriek came at infrequent intervals when the wind shifted. A reddish glare, too, seemed to filter through the pale undergrowth beyond the endless avenues of forest night. Reluctant even to be left alone again, each one of the cowed squatters refused point blank to advance another inch toward the scene of unholy worship. So Inspector Legrassi and his 19 colleagues plunged on, unguided, into black arcades of horror that none of them had ever trod before. The region now entered by police was one of the traditionally evil repute, substantially unknown and untraversed by white men. There were legends of a hidden lake unglimpsed by the mortal sight, in which dwelt a huge, formless, white polypous thing with luminous eyes. And squatters whispered that bat-winged devils flew up out of the caverns in the inner earth to worship it at midnight. They said it had been there before de Libreville or La Celle, or before the Indians, and even before the wholesome beasts and birds of the woods. It was nightmare itself, and to see it was to die. But it made men dream, and so they knew enough to keep away. The present voodoo gathering was indeed on the merest fringe of this abhorred area. But at that location was bad enough. Hence, perhaps, the very place of the worship had terrified the squatters more than the shocking sounds and incidents. Only poetry or madness could do justice to the noises heard by Legrassi's men as they plowed on through the black morass toward the red glare and the muffled tom-toms. There are vocal qualities peculiar to men, and vocal qualities peculiar to beasts, and it is terrible to hear the one when the source should yield the other. Animal fury, and something that I don't know here whip themselves to demonic heights by howls and squawking ecstasies that tore and reverberated through those nighted woods like pestilential tempests from the gulfs of hell. Goodness gracious, this is hard to read. Now and then the less organized ululations would cease, and from what seemed a well-drilled chorus of hoarse voices would rise and sing-song chant that hideous phrase or ritual. Cthulu. Then the men, having reached a spot where the trees were thinner, came suddenly in sight of the spectacle itself. 4 of them reeled, 1 fainted, and 2 were shaken into a frantic cry which the mad cacophony of the gathering fortunately deadened. Legrassi dashed swamp water on the face of fainting men, and all stood trembling and nearly hypnotized by the horror. In a natural glade of the swamp stood a grassy island of perhaps an acre's extent, clear of trees and tolerably dry. On this now leaped and twisted a more indescribable horde of human abnormality than but a Sime or Angorola could paint. Void of clothing, so butt-ass naked, this hybrid spawn were braying, bellowing, and writhing about a monstrous ring-shaped bonfire, in the center of which, revealed by occasional rifts, in the curtain of flame, stood a great granite monolith, some 8 feet in height, on top of which, incongruous in its diminutiveness, rested the noxious carven statuette. From a wide circle of 10 scaffolds set up at regular intervals, with the flame-girt monolith as a center, hung, head downward, the oddly marred bodies of the helpless squatters who had disappeared. Oh no! So there's like dead people hanging from the monolith. It was inside the circle that the ring of worshippers jumped and roared, the general direction of the mass motion being from left to right, an endless something between the ring of bodies and the ring of fire. Hello, Michael! Just in time, this reminds me of those good old story narrations I used to watch and listen to. Yeah, I'm not a good narrator, like at all. So sorry about that.
Tonight is gonna be.
Sorry, that was an ad. Goodness. All right. Let's get back to it. It may have been only imagination, and it may have been only echoes which induced one of the men, an excitable Spaniard, to fancy he heard an antiphonal responses to the ritual from some far and unilluminated spot deeper within the wood of ancient legendary, legendary and horror. This man, Joseph D. Galvez, I later met and questioned, and he proved distractingly imaginative. He indeed went so far as to hint of the faint beating of great wings, and a glimpse of shining eyes, and mountainous white bulk beyond the remotest trees, but I suppose he had been hearing too much native superstition. Spooky head. Actually, the horrified pause of the men was of comparatively brief duration. Duty came first, and although there must have been nearly 100 mongrel celebrants in the throng, the police relied on their firearms and plunged determinedly, I guess that's right, determinedly into the nauseous route. For 5 minutes, the resultant din and chaos were beyond description. Wild blows were struck, shots were fired, and escapes were made. But in the end, Legrassi was able to count some 47 stolen prisoners, whom he forced to dress in haste and fall into line between 2 rows of policemen, cause they was all naked. 5 of the worshippers lay dead, and 2 severely wounded ones were carried away on improvised stretchers by their fellow prisoners. The image on the monolith, of course, was carefully removed and carried back by Legrassi. Examined at headquarters after a trip of intense strain and weariness, the prisoners all proved to be men of very low mixed blood and mentally aberrant type. Most were seamen, and a sprinkling of African Americans and mulattoes, and largely West Indians or Brava Portuguese from the Cape Verde Islands, gave a coloring of voodooism to the heterogeneous cult. But before many questions were asked, it became manifest that something far deeper and older than this fetishism was involved. Degraded and ignorant as they were, the creatures held a surprising consistency to the central idea of their loathsome faith. I just read too fast. I worry that I read too fast. Oh, here we go. They worshipped, so they said, the great old ones, who lived ages before there were even any men, and who came to the young world out of the sky. These old ones were gone now, inside the earth and under the sea, but their dead bodies had told their secrets and dreams to the first man who formed a cult which had never died. This was that cult, and the prisoners said it had always existed, and always would exist, hidden in distant wastes and dark places all over the world, until the time when the great priest Cthulu, from his dark house in the mighty city of Relier, under the waters, should rise and bring Earth again beneath his sway. Someday he would call when the stars were ready, and the secret cult would always be waiting to liberate him. Meanwhile, no more must be told. There was a secret which even torture could not extract. Mankind was not absolutely alone among the conscious things of Earth, for shapes came out of the dark to visit the faithful few. But these were not the great old ones. No man had ever seen the old ones. The carven idol was great Cthulu, but none might say whether or not the others were precisely like him. No one could read the old writings now, but things were told by word of mouth. The chanted ritual was not the secret. That was never spoken aloud, only whispered. The chant meant only this: in his house at Relier, dead Cthulhu waits dreaming. Only 2 of the prisoners were found sane enough to be hanged, and the rest were committed to various institutions. All denied a part in the ritual murderers, and averred that the killing had been done by black-winged ones which had come to them from their immemorial meeting place in the haunted wood. But of those mysterious allies no coherent account could ever be gained. What the police did extract came mainly from an immensely aged mestizo named Castro, who claimed to have sailed to strange ports and talked with the undying leaders of the cult in the mountains of China. What the? Sheesh! Sheesh! Hello, Lunchbox! Hello, MK! Oh, okay, it's fine. Thank you so much for stopping in. We are on chapter 2 of Call of Cthulhu. Yep, so far, basically, there's this guy, and his uncle was a professor, and oh my god, Lunchbox, thank you for the resub! 4 months, thank you for 4 months of support, thank you so much! So, this guy's uncle died a strange death, and he was a professor. And so this guy that's telling the story went to his dead uncle's office at his university where he worked or something like that, and then he found all these things about him working with some other scientist who was having weird dreams, and then in his files were accounts of people all over the world having these weird dreams around the same time. And so all the dreams were talking about basically Cthulhu. You know, octopus, dragon, winged dude thing, and a monolith, and just some weird worshipping stuff, and like tongues, people speaking in tongues and whatnot. And so, but pretty much everybody was dead that could account for anything. And so he's investigating this, and they came across this police officer who had something to do with it. Like, he knew a little bit about something that sounded similar. And so he's telling the story about what happened to him that was similar to his professor's uncle's findings. And it's about some ritual in New Orleans, and they found some dead bodies and some weird stuff going on. Basically, they were worshiping Cthulhu, and they said that Cthulhu is like one of the old ones. I think he's one of the old ones, or something like that. I'm really bad at explaining stuff, so if you don't understand, maybe you're interested, then I would suggest checking it out yourself. Love the new overlay. Oh, thank you! I didn't know what else to do. I put this together last second, just for the stream. It's like a fireplace. You can't really see the fireplace, but yeah, I have this here so you can follow along if you like. Gonna have the stream second monitor. Enjoy the reading. Hello, Dale! Thank you for the lyric. Anyway, I tried to explain it as best I could. I'm a really, really horrible storyteller, and I'm not a good narrator either, and I can't pronounce half of these words because this was written in like 1800s. So yeah, this is really, really old. But yeah, so sorry about all that. And we continue. So basically, they went to the ritual, and then they took as many people as they could, and then they're trying to find out everything they can about this weird statue that the professor had, and it's a statue of Cthulhu, and has some like ancient writing on it. But they're trying to figure out everything they can about this supposed cult that worships the old ones and Cthulhu. And basically the cult said that they're waiting for Cthulhu to take Earth back into the water with him to his ancient city or some junk like that. Okay. Let's see. Alright, so now... okay, what the police did extract came mainly from an immensely aged mestizo named Castro, who claimed to have sailed to strange ports and talked with undying leaders of the cult in mountains of China. Okay. Old Castro remembered bits of hideous legend that paled the speculations of Theosophists and made man and the world seem recent and transient indeed. There had been eons when other things ruled the earth, and they had great cities. Remains of them, he said, the deathless Chinamen had told him, were still to be found as Cyclopean stones on islands in the Pacific. They all died vast epochs, I don't know these words, of time before man came. But there were arts which could revive them when the stars had come around again to the right positions of the cycle of eternity. They had indeed come themselves from the stars, and brought their images with them. These great old ones, Castro continued, were not composed altogether of flesh and blood. They had shape, for did not this star-fashioned image prove it? But that shape was not made of matter. When the stars were right, they could plunge from the world to world through the sky, but when the stars were wrong, they could not live. But although they no longer lived, they would never really die. They all lay in stone houses in their great city of Relier, reserved by the— I know I'm saying that wrong, and I'm sorry. Preserved by the spells of the mighty Cthulu for a glorious resurrection when the stars and the earth might once more be ready for them. But at that time, some force from outside must serve to liberate their bodies. The spell that preserved them intact likewise prevented them from making an initial move, and they could only lie awake in the dark and think whilst uncounted millions of years rolled by. They knew all that was occurring in the universe, for their mode of speech was transmitted thought. Even now they talked in their tombs. When, after infinities of chaos, the first men came, the great old ones spoke to the sensitive among them by molding their dreams. For only thus could their language reach the fleshy minds of mammals. Then, whispered Castro, those first men formed the cult around small idols, which the great ones showed them. Idols brought in dim eras from dark stars. That cult would never die till the stars came right again, and the secret priests would take the great Cthulhu from his tomb and revive his subjects and resume his rule of Earth. The time would be easy to know, for then mankind would have become as the great old ones, free and wild and beyond good and evil, with the laws and morals thrown aside and all men shouting and killing and reveling in joy. What the heck?
Get GTA Online free on PS5.
Get GTA Online free on PS5. Gosh, there's a lot of ads. Anyway. This reminds me so much of Creepypasta, them horror stories. This is one of the original horror stories. This was written in like 1800s. This is Call of Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft. He really shaped the horror genre with his books. And a lot of his other books build upon the lore that is set in this book. So that's why I'm reading this one. Gotta get that GTA! Anyway. I'm gonna drink more water. Okay. Alright, where were we? Ah, yes, shouting and killing and reveling in joy. Only then the liberated old ones would teach them new ways to shout and kill and revel and enjoy themselves, and all the earth would flame with a holocaust of ecstasy and freedom. Meanwhile, the cult, by appropriate rites, must keep alive the memory of those ancient ways and shadow forth the prophecy of their return. In the elder time, chosen men had talked with the entombed old ones in dreams, but then something had happened. The great stone city of Relier, the great stone city of Relier, with its monoliths and sepulchres, had sunk beneath the waves. And the deep waters, full of the one primal mystery through which not even thought can pass, had cut off the spectral intercourse. But memory never died, and high priests said that the city would rise again when the stars were right. Then came out of the earth the black spirits of earth, moldy and shadowy, and full of dim rumors picked up in caverns beneath forgotten sea bottoms. But of them old Castro dared not speak much. He cut himself off hurriedly, and no amount of persuasion or subtlety could elicit more in this direction. The size of the old ones, too, he curiously declined to mention. Of the cult, he said that he thought the center lay amid the pathless deserts of Arabia, where Erim, the city of pillars, dreams hidden and untouched. It was not allied to the European witch cult, and was virtually unknown beyond its members. No book had ever really hinted of it, though the Deathless Chinaman said that there were double meanings in the Necronomicon of the mad Arab Abdul al-Jarid. With the initiated might read as they chose, especially the much discussed couplet. This is not dead, which can eternal lie, and with strange eons, even death may die. I have the perfect setup to enjoy the story: a stormy night with heavy rain. Oh no! Lagrassi, which is the police officer, Lagrassi, deeply impressed and not a little bewildered, had inquired in vain concerning the historic affiliations of the cult. Castro, apparently, had told the truth when he said that it was wholly secret. The authorities at Tulane University could shed no light upon either cult or image. And now the detective had come to the highest authorities in the country and met with no more than the Greenland tale of Professor Webb. The feverish interest aroused at the meeting by Lagrassi's tale, corroborated as it was by the statuette, is echoed in the subsequent correspondence of those who attended, although scant mention occurs in the formal publication of the society. Caution is the first care of those accustomed to face occasional charlatanry and imposture. Lagrassi for some time lent the image to Professor Webb, but at the latter's death it was returned to him and remains in his possession, where I viewed it not long ago. It is truly a terrible thing, and unmistakably akin to the dream sculpture of young Wilcox. Kinda jealous. Wait, why are you jealous of the rain? Hello, Piku! Judy with full circle, she's a gam now. If your grandma reads Call of Cthulhu, I don't really know. I don't really know what to say about that. How are you, Piku? Thanks for stopping in. Anyway. I kinda want some stormy rain right now. Cool, gams. I wonder if I can find like spooky rain music on YouTube. It needs to be wet. We need to get wet in here. Ooh. Spoopy. Spooky. Hello, Yelled K. Thank you for the follow. Nice and wet. Spoopy rain. Haunting storm cloud. Let's see, moist rain. Soothing thunder and sound rains for sleeping. Spooky night. Halloween spoopy ambiance. Rainy Halloween. Do you understand Spanish? I do not. I'm so sorry. I only speak the English.
That's super overpriced, but whatever. Can you just buy it? We've been shopping all...
Okay, let's see what this sounds like. That rain sounds mighty wet. I haven't turned up as high as it'll go. Like, can you just buy it? Like, oh my god. Oh my god, Becky. Look at her butt. It's so big. Hello, my dog! Macho man. Whose butt? I don't know whose butt. Anyway, can you hear the rain? Can you guys hear the rain? I don't hear any like music though. Has to have music. This is literally rain. What is this? Can the music play on a second tab? I guess it could. Oh my god, it sounds so spooky! Dang! Nice, Magnus! You created the perfect ambiance. I adore the spooky vibes too, it's cool. Maybe we'll read more after this one if we enjoy this one. Maybe I'll get used to reading. Actually, I need to get another water. I'll be well. I think I'm gonna finish this. I'm gonna finish this chapter and then I'm gonna get a water. Hello, lonely boy. Welcome in. Happy Friday, and welcome to Spoopy.
Spoopy! Spoopy story time!
Okay, here we go. Where am I? Alright. Welcome to Insanity, exactly. Okay. That my uncle was excited by the tale of the sculptor, I did not wonder, for what thoughts might arise upon hearing, after a knowledge of what Lagrassi had learned of the cult, of a sensitive young man who had dreamed not only of the figure and exact hieroglyphics of the swamp-found image and the Greenland devil tablet, alarm, but had come in his dreams upon at least 3 of the precise words of the formula uttered alike by Eskimo diabolists and mongrel Louisiana. Them dang Louisianan mongrels. Oh my goodness. Professor Engel's instant start on an investigation of the utmost thoroughness was eminently natural. Though privately I suspected young Wilcox of having heard of the cult in some indirect way, and of having invented a series of dreams to heighten and continue the mystery at my uncle's expense. The dream narratives and the cuttings collected by the professor were, of course, strong corroboration, but the rationalism of my mind and the extravagance of the whole subject led me to adopt what I thought the most sensible conclusions. So, after thoroughly studying the manuscript again, and correlating the theosophical and anthropological notes with which the cult narrative of Lagrassi, I made a trip to Providence to see the sculptor and give him the rebuke of I thought proper for so boldly imposing upon a learned and aged man. Whew, man, this is hard to read. Wilcox still lived alone in the Fleur de Lis building in Thomas Street, a hideous Victorian imitation of the 17th century Breton architecture which flaunts its stuccoed front amidst the lovely colonial houses on the ancient hill. Oh my god, this is so hard to read. And under the very shadow of the finest Georgian steeple in America. I found him at work in his rooms, and at once conceded from the specimens scattered about that this genius is indeed profound and authentic. He will, I believe, be heard from some time as one of the great decadents, for he has crystallized in clay and will one day mirror in marble those nightmares and fantasies which Arthur Machen evokes in prose, and Clark Ashton Smith makes visible in verse and in painting. Dark, frail, and somewhat unkempt in aspect, he turned languidly at my knock, and asked me my business without rising. When I told him who I was, he displayed some interest, for my uncle had excited his curiosity in probing his strange dreams, yet had never explained the reason for the study. I did not enlarge his knowledge in this regard, but sought with some subtlety to draw him out. In a short time, I became convinced of his absolute sincerity, for he spoke of the dreams in a manner none could mistake. They and their subconscious residuum had influenced his art profoundly, and he showed me a morbid statue whose contours almost made me shake with the potency of its black suggestion. He could not recall having seen the original of this thing except in his own dream bas-relief. But the outlines had formed themselves insensibly under his hands. It was no doubt the giant shape that had raved of in delirium. Oh my god! It was a period. It was a period commercial. That is truly horrific, yes. Anyway. It was no doubt the giant shape he had raved of in delirium, that he really knew nothing of the hidden cult, save from what my uncle's relentless catechism had let fall. He soon made clear, and again I strove to think of some way in which he could possibly have received the weird impressions. He talked of his dreams in a strangely poetic fashion, making me see with terrible vividness the damp cyclopean city of slimy green stone, whose geometry, he oddly said, was all wrong, and hear with frightened expectancy the ceaseless, half-mental calling from the underground, Cthulu, Cthulu. These words had formed part of that dread ritual which told of dead Cthulhu's dream vigil in his stone vault at Relier, and I felt deeply moved despite my rational beliefs. Wilcox, I was sure, had heard of the cult in some casual way, and had soon forgotten it amidst the mass of his equally weird reading and imagining. Later, by virtue of its sheer impressiveness, it had found subconscious expression in dreams, in the bas-relief, and in the terrible statue I now beheld. So that his imposture upon my uncle had been a very innocent one. The youth was of a type at once slightly affected and now slightly ill-mannered, which I could never like, but I was willing enough now to admit both his genius and his honesty. I took leave of him amicably, and wish him all the success his talent promises. Exactly how I read that? The matter of the cult still remained to fascinate me, and at times I had visions of personal fame from researches into its origin and connections. I visited New Orleans, talked with Legrassi and others of that old-time raiding party, saw the frightful image, and even questioned such of the mongrel prisoners as still survived. Old Castro, unfortunately, had been dead for some years. What I now heard was so graphically at first hand, though it was really no more than a detailed confirmation of what my uncle had written, excited me afresh. For I felt sure that I was on the track of a very real, very secret, and very ancient religion whose discovery would make me an anthropologist of note. My attitude was still one of absolute materialism, as I wish it still were, and I discounted with a most inexplicable perversity the coincidence of the dream notes and odd cuttings collected by Professor Engel. Hi, Sean! Sean, thank you so much for the 13 months! Oh my goodness! Good morning! I hope you have a wonderful day today. It is Saturday, right? Hope you have a wonderful Saturday. Oh, we're almost done with this chapter. I can get more water. Okay, one more paragraph. I got woken up by drilling. I'm so sorry. That's horrible. Poor Sean. I hope you can take a nap or something later. Alright, one more paragraph. One thing which I began to suspect, and which I now fear I know, is that my uncle's death was far from natural. He fell on a narrow hill street landing. Wait, he fell on a narrow hill street leading. Wait, he fell on a narrow hill street leading up from an ancient waterfront, swarming with foreign mongrels, after a careless push from a sailor. I did not forget the mixed blood and the marine pursuits of the cult members in Louisiana, and would not be surprised to learn of secret methods and poison needles, as ruthless and as anciently known as the cryptic rites and beliefs. Legrassi and his men, it is true, have been let alone, but in Norway a certain seaman who saw things is now dead. Might not the deeper inquiries of my uncle after encouraging the sculptor's data have come to sinister ears? I think Professor Engel died because he knew too much, or because he was likely to learn too much. Whether I shall go as he did remains to be seen, for I have learned much now. And that is the end of chapter 2. And I'm gonna go get some more water. BRB!
Other tissues can cause a sore red nose. Try Puffs, the #1 lotion tissue to soothe your blows.
Thank you for coming on such short notice. Miss Grace is your best. I found the body in a trunk in the attic. It belonged to an actress who disappeared in 1934.
Welcome to the Cadence. Enjoy your show.
Her name was Viola Vane.
First blow is to her wrist. Second and fatal blow is to her head. Say she was trying to defend herself.
You just love a good whodunit.
What is this ad?
Doing this order for you.
This is all for you. There's a lot of ads in this one. Jeez! Man, I was thinking I wasn't gonna get my water in for today because I've been cheating today on my food and my waters, but this reading is gonna make me get there. I already drank like 2 glasses of water. I'm already halfway done with this one. Yeah, I've drank 2 glasses of water and a whole cup of coffee just in this time. Me when Junie reads Cthulu. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Wow. Hydration. I know I'm not very good at reading, I'm sorry. I'm trying my best. I stumble over the words and don't understand a lot of them, and I pause at weird times and do weird inflections and intonations. Mustache timer! Let me get the mustache. Alright. Oh god, it's shaking weird. Huh? Oh! Oh! Have you ever screamed so loud that your mustache goes sideways? Oh, my glasses got bigger. Seemed a little sussy. This story seems a little sussy. Just like my mustache. Oh my god. Get on there, you stupid son of a gun. Alright, whatever. You're gonna have to deal with my mustache being weird. And my glasses are huge. Oh gosh. That happens to me daily. Dusty mustachio. Drink water, water good in it, bro. Gam, I'm home. Have a cookie. Gam grew a mustache while you're gone. I got put in a hairy situation. Alright, we ready for this third chapter? Chapter 3. The madness from the sea. Alright, so for those who don't know, basically the gist is that, okay, so the guy that's talking about all this, his uncle was a professor and his uncle died in a really weird way. And so he went to his uncle's office where he worked, and he found that his uncle was investigating these people that are having these weird dreams, and he also came across this weird like bust looking statuette thing, and that is obviously Cthulhu, and it has some ancient writing on it. And so he's trying to investigate this and investigate the dreams and carry on his uncle's work, I guess. And so that leads him to some people, and one of them notably is a police officer from New Orleans. He says that he recounts a time where he went out and did a call and an investigation, and it ended up leading to like some weird ritual in the woods, and there was like a bunch of naked people and they were killing people and they were worshiping something, and there was weirdness and it was gross and it was nasty, but they took some prisoners. They took prisoners, and they asked them questions, and then they started talking about how they were worshiping Cthulhu. He was a priest of the old ones, and that when the stars align just right, Cthulhu will come and he will bring Earth. He will take reign over Earth, and he will take it back down underwater to his city of Rhodia or whatever. Or something like that. And so basically, you know, he's trying to find out more about this cult. Apparently this cult existed way before man did, and people still worship these old gods, and but nobody ever talks about it. So he's wanting to find out more, and he's starting to realize that his uncle, yes, did die an unnatural death, and so did all these other people that well, a lot of these other people that were in the investigation as well. So Gam has a mustache. Booba bust. I see a place that's near me. Anyway, so yeah, now we're on chapter 3. I've always wanted to read this book. And a lot of his other books build, well, they build off of this lore that he lays out in this book. So that's why I chose to read this book first, just in case we want to read more in the future. In this text, Patterson. Oh. Alright, chapter 3. The Madness from the Sea. I know there's gonna be another ad soon. Anyway, the madness from the sea. If heaven ever wishes to grant me a boon, it will be a total effacing of the results of a mere chance which fixed my eye on a certain stray piece of shelf paper. It was nothing on which I could naturally have stumbled in the course of my daily round, for it was an old number of an Australian journal, Sydney Bulletin, for April 18th, 1925, and oh my god, it's a bra ad! Okay, anyway, I've had ads for periods and bras and everything else come up through this. Oh goodness, okay. Alright, so It was nothing on which I would naturally have stumbled in the course of my daily round, for it was an old number of an Australian journal, Sydney Bulletin, for April 18th, 1925. It had escaped even the Cutting Bureau, which had, at that time of its issuance, been avidly collecting material for my uncle's research. Yeah, you guys talked about booba, so it played a booba ad. I had largely given over my inquiries into what Professor Engel called the Cthulu cult, and was visiting a learned friend of Paterson. Paterson? Is that how you say it? Paterson or Patterson? New Jersey. Sure, I did it because of what? Yeah, totally because you got Patterson? Okay. Patterson, New Jersey. The curator of a local museum and a mineralogist of note. Oh dang, that's interesting. That's funny. It would be noted in this book. Forget so many Cthulhu, so many bra ads. No more bra ads. I would rather have that than period ads, though. I'm not gonna lie. Anyway, examining one day the reserve specimens roughly set out on the storage shelves in a rear room of the museum, my eye was caught by an odd figure in one of the old papers spread beneath the stones. It was the Sydney Bulletin I have mentioned, where my friend has wide affiliations in all conceivable foreign parts. And the picture was a half-tone cut of a hideous stone image, almost identical with that which Legrassi had found in the swamp. Eagerly clearing the sheet of its precious contents, I scanned the item in detail, and was disappointed to find it only of moderate length. What it suggested, however, was of portentous significance to my flagging quest, and I carefully tore it out for immediate action. It read as follows: Mystery derelict found at sea. Vigilant arrives with helpless armed New Zealand yacht in tow. One survivor and dead man found aboard. Tale of desperate battle and deaths at sea. Rescued seaman refuses particulars of strange experience. Odd idol found in his possession. Inquiry to follow. The Morrison Company's freighter Vigilant, bound from Valparaiso, arrived this morning at its wharf in Darling Harbor, having in tow the battered and disabled but heavily armed steam yacht Alert of Dunedin, New Zealand, which was sighted April 12th in south latitude 34 degrees 21 somethings west, the longitudes of 152, and I don't know how to read that junk, with one living and one dead man aboard. The Vigilant left Valparaiso March 25th, and on April 2nd was driven considerably south of her course by exceptionally heavy storms and monster waves. Minutes. On April 12th, the derelict was sighted, and though apparently deserted, was found upon boarding to contain one survivor in a half-delirious condition and one man who had evidently been dead for more than a week. He must have stanky. Like minutes and seconds. Oh my gosh. The living man was clutching a horrible stone idol of unknown origin, about a foot in height, regarding whose nature authorities at Sydney University, the Royal Society, and the museum in College Street all profess complete bafflement, and which the survivor says he found in the cabin of the yacht, and a small carved shrine of common pattern. This man, after recovering his senses, told an exceedingly strange story of piracy and slaughter. He is Gustav Johansen, a Norwegian of some intelligence, and had been second mate of the two-masted schooner Emma of Auckland, which sailed for Callao February 20th. I don't know geography. With a complement of 11 men. Oh, wow. The Emma, he says, was delayed and thrown widely south of her course by the great storm of March 1st, and on March 22nd, in south latitude 49 degrees 51... Did you say 51 minutes? I don't know. Blah, 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 encountered the Alert, manned by a strange and evil-looking crew of Kanakas and half-castes, being ordered peremptorily to turn back. Captain Collins refused. Whereupon the strange crew began to fire savagely and without warning upon the schooner with a peculiar heavy battery of brass cannon forming part of the yacht's equipment. Whew, gosh, reading's hard. How is this better than Audible? Like, I'm reading this horribly. Anyway, the Emma's men showed fight, says a survivor, and though the schooner began to sink from shots beneath the waterline, they managed to heave alongside their enemy and board her, grappling with the savage crew on the yacht's deck, and being forced to kill them all, the number being slightly superior because of their particular abhorrent and desperate, though rather clumsy mode of fighting. 3 of the Emma's men, including Captain Collins and First Mate Green, were killed, and the remaining 8 under the second mate Johansen proceeded to navigate the captured yacht, going ahead in their original direction to see if any reason for ordering their back had existed. How was that? Is that even bad? Oh. The next day, it appears, they raised and landed on a small island, although none is known to exist in that part of the ocean. And 6 of the men somehow died ashore, though Johansen is clearly reticent about this part of his story, and speaks only of their falling into a rock chasm. Man, he done killed them dudes. Later, it seems, he and one companion boarded the yacht and tried to manage her, but were beaten about by the storm of April 2nd. From that time till his rescue on the 12th, the man remembers little, and he does not even recall when William Bryden, his companion, died. Bryden's death reveals no apparent cause, and was probably due to excitement or exposure. Cable advices from Dunedin report that the Alert was well known there as an island trader and bore an evil reputation along the waterfront. It was owned by a curious group of half-castes whose frequent meetings and night trips to the woods attracted no little curiosity. And it had set sail in great haste just after the storm and earth tremors of March 1st. Our Auckland correspondent gives the Emma and her crew an excellent reputation, and Johansen is described as a sober and worthy man. The Admiralty will institute an inquiry on the whole matter beginning tomorrow, at which every effort will be made to induce Johansen to speak more freely than he had done hitherto, and screw you, you stupid ad! Stop! Nobody cares about your stanky piss, girl! God. Okay. Anyway. This was all together with the picture of the hellish image, but what a train of ideas it started in my mind. Here were new treasuries of data on the Cthulu cult, and evidence that it had strange interests at sea as well as on land. What motive prompted the hybrid crew to order back to Emma as they sailed about with their hideous idol? What was the unknown island on which 6 of the Emma's crew had died, and about which the mate Johansen was so secretive? What had the Vice Admiral's investigation brought out, and what was known of the noxious cult in Dunedin? And most marvelous of all, What deep and more than natural linkage of dates was this which gave a malign and now undeniable significance to the various turn of events so carefully noted by my uncle? March 1st through our February 28th, according to the international dateline, the earthquake and storm had come. From Dunedin, the Alert and her noisome crew had darted eagerly forth, as if imperiously summoned, and on the other side of the earth, poets and artists had begun to dream of a strange, dank, cyclopean city, whilst a young sculptor had molded in his sleep the form of the dreaded Cthulu. On March 23rd, the crew of the Emma landed on an unknown island and left 6 men dead. And on that date, the dreams of sensitive men assumed a heightened vividness and darkened with the dread of a giant monster's malign pursuit. Whilst an architect had gone mad and a sculptor had lapsed suddenly into delirium. And what of this storm of April 2nd, the date on which all dreams the dank city ceased and Wilcox emerged unharmed from the bondage of strange fever? What of all this, and of these hints of old Castro about the sunken starborn old ones and their coming reign, their faithful cult and their mastery of dreams? I was tottering on the brink of cosmic horrors beyond man's power to bear. If so, they must be horrors of the mind alone, though in some way the 2nd of April had put a stop to whatever monstrous menace had begun its siege of mankind's soul. That evening, after a day of hurried cabling and arranging, I bade my host adieu and took a train for San Francisco. In less than a month, I was in Dunedin, where, however, I found that little was known of the strange cult members who had lingered in the old sea taverns. Waterfront scum was far too common for special mention, though there was vague talk about one inland trip these mongrels had made, during which faint drumming and red flame were noted on distant hills. In Auckland, I learned that Johansson had returned with yellow hair turned white after a perfunctory and inconclusive questioning at Sydney, and had thereafter sold his cottage in West Street and sailed with his wife to his old home in Oslo. Of his stirring experience, he would tell his friends no more than he had told the Admiral officials, and all they could do was to give me his Oslo address. After that, I went to Sydney and talked profitlessly with seamen and members of the Vice Admiral Court. I saw the Alert, now sold and in commercial use, at Circular Quay in Sydney Cove, but gained nothing from its non-committal bulk. The crouching image with its cuttlefish head, dragon body, scaly wings, and hieroglyphed pedestal was preserved in the museum at Hyde Park, and I studied it long and well, finding it a thing of balefully exquisite workmanship, and with the same utter mystery, terrible antiquity, and unearthly strangeness of material which I had noted in Lagrassi's smaller specimen. Geologists, the curator told me, had found it a monstrous puzzle, for they vowed that the world held no rock like it. Then I thought with a shudder of what old Castro had told Lagrassi about the primal great ones. They had come from the stars, and had brought their images with them. Shaken with such a mental revolution as I had ever known before, I now resolved to visit Mate Johansson in Oslo. Sailing for London, I re-embarked at once for the Norwegian capital. And one autumn day I landed at the trim wharves in the shadow of Egberg. Johansson's address, I discovered, lay in the old town of King Harold Haradrada.
Charmin Ultrasoft is absorbent.
Stupid toilet paper ad! Oh my god, why does it have to be all the embarrassing ads? And it's like every minute. It's like after every song. What the shit, dude? It knows I'm about to poop my pants. Is this YouTube? Yes, it is. Anyway, where was I? Ah, yes. We already had spooky music. Might need this. Oh, I was like, why can't I hear anything? Because it's when I muted it. Okay. Okay. Johansson's address, I discovered, lay in the old town of King Harold Haradrada, which kept alive the name of Oslo during all the centuries that the greater city masqueraded as Christiania. I made the brief trip by taxicab and knocked with palpitant heart at the door of a neat and ancient building with plastered front. A sad-faced woman in black answered my summons, and I was stung with disappointment when she told me in halting English that Gustav Johansson was no more. He had not long survived his return, said his wife, for the doings at sea in 1925 had broken him. He had told her no more than he had told the public, but had left a long manuscript of technical matters, as he said, written in English, evidently in order to safeguard her from the peril of casual perusal. During a walk through a narrow lane through Gothenburg Dock, a bundle of papers falling from an attic window had knocked him down. 2 Lascar sailors at once helped him to his feet, but before the ambulance could reach him, he was dead. Physicians found no adequate cause for the end, and laid it to heart trouble and a weakened constitution. I now felt gnawing at my vitals, that dark terror which will never leave me till I too am at rest, accidentally or otherwise. Persuading the widow that my connection with her husband's technical matters was sufficient to entitle me to his manuscript, I bore the document away and began to read it on the London boat. It was a simple rambling thing, a naive sailor's effort at post-facto diary, and strove to recall day by day the last awful voyage. I cannot attempt to translate it verbatim in all its cloudiness and redundance, but I will tell its gist enough to show why the sound of the water against the vessel's sides became so unendurable to me that I stopped my ears with cotton. Johansson, thank God, did not know quite all, even though he saw the city and the thing, but I shall never sleep calmly again when I think of the horrors that lurk ceaselessly behind life in time and in space, and of those unhallowed blasphemies from elder stars which dream beneath the sea. The piano's getting loud. Kind of loud. Alright, settle down there, piano. Okay. Poop. Dang, this is a really long-ass sentence. Okay. Johansson, thank God, did not know quite all, even though he saw the city and the thing. But I shall never sleep calmly again when I think of the horrors that lurk ceaselessly behind life in time and in space, and of those unhallowed blasphemies from elder stars which dream beneath the sea, known and favored by a nightmare cult ready and eager to lose them on the world whenever another earthquake shall heave their monstrous stone city again to the sun and air. Johansson's voyage had begun just as he told it to the Vice Admiral. The Emma in ballast had cleared Auckland on February 20th and had felt the full force of that earthquake-born tempest, which must have heaved up from the sea bottom the horrors that filled the men's dreams. Once more under control, the ship was making good progress when held up by the Alert on March 22nd, and I could feel the mate's regret as he wrote of her bombardment and sinking. Of the swarthy cult fiends on the Alert, he speaks with significant horror. There was some peculiarly abdominal quality about them, which made their destruction seem almost a duty, and Johansson shows ingenuous wonder at the charge of ruthlessness brought against his party during the proceedings of the Court of Inquiry. Then, driven ahead by curiosity in their captured yacht under Johansen's command, the men sight a great stone pillar sticking out of the sea. And they came upon a coastline of mingled mud, ooze, and weedy cyclopean masonry, which can be nothing less than the tangible substance of Earth's supreme terror. The nightmare of corpse city of R'lyeh was built in measureless eons behind history by the vast, loathsome shapes that seeped down from the dark stars. There lay great Cthulu and his hordes, hidden in green, slimy vaults, and sending out at last, after cycles incalculable, the thoughts that spread fear to the dreams of the sensitive, and called imperiously to the faith upon stupid Iron Man and his stupid ad! Okay. Okay, there lay great Cthulhu and his hordes, hidden in green slimy vaults, and sending out at last, after cycles incalculable, the thoughts that spread fear to the dreams of the sensitive, and called imperiously to the faithful to come on a pilgrimage of liberation and restoration. All this Johansen did not suspect, but God knows he soon saw enough. I suppose that only a single mountaintop, the hideous monolith-crowned citadel whereon great Cthulhu was buried, actually emerged from the waters. When I think of the extent of all that may be brooding down there, I almost wish to kill myself forthwith. Goodness gracious. Johansen and his men were awed by the cosmic majesty of this dripping Babylon of elder demons, and must have guessed without guidance that it was nothing of this or any sane planet. Awe at the unbelievable size of the greenish stone blocks, at the dizzying height of the great carven monolith, and at the stupefying identity of the colossal statues and bas-reliefs with the strange image found in the shrine on the alert is poignantly visible in every line of the mate's frightened description. Without knowing what futurism is like, Johansen achieved something very close to it when he spoke of the city. For instead of describing any definite structure of building, he dwells only on the broad impressions of vast angles and stone surfaces. Surfaces too great to belong to anything right or proper for this earth, and impious with horrible images and hieroglyphs. I mention his talk about angles because it suggests something Wilcox had told me of his awful dreams. He said that the geometry of the dream place he saw was abnormal, and loathsomely redolent of spheres and dimensions apart from ours. Now an unlettered seaman felt the same thing whilst gazing at the terrible reality. Johansen and his men landed at a sloping mud bank on this monstrous acropolis and clambered slipperily up over titan oozy blocks which could have been no mortal staircase. The very sun of heaven seemed distorted when viewed through the polarizing miasma welling out from this sea-soaked perversion, and twisted menace and suspense lurked leeringly in those crazily elusive angles of carven rock, where a second glance showed concavity after the first showed convexity. Dang, these long-ass words, dude. Something very like fright had come over all the explorers before anything more definite than rock and ooze and weed was seen. Each would have fled had he not feared the scorn of the others, and it was only half-heartedly that they searched, vainly as it proved, for some portable souvenir to bear away. It was Rodriguez, the Portuguese, who climbed up the foot of the monolith and shouted of what he had found. The rest followed him and looked curiously at the immense carved door with the now familiar squid dragon bas-relief. It was, Johansen said, like a great barn door, and they all felt that it was a door because of the ornate lintel, threshold, and jambs around it, though they could not decide whether it lay flat like a trapdoor or slantwise like an outside cellar door. As Wilcox would have said, the geometry of the place was all wrong. One could not be sure that the sea and the ground were horizontal, hence the relative position of everything else seemed phantasmally variable. Bryden pushed at the stone in several places without result. Then Donovan felt over it delicately around the edge, pressing each point separately as he went. He climbed interminably along the grotesque stone molding, that is, no one would call it climbing if the thing was not, after all, horizontal. And the men wondered how any door in the universe could be so vast. Then, very softly and slowly, the acre great panel began to give inward at the top, and they saw that it was balanced. Donovan slid or somehow propelled himself down or along the jamb and rejoined his fellows. And everyone watched the strange recession of the monstrously carven portal. In this fantasy of prismatic distortion, it moved anomalously in a diagonal way, so that all the rules of matter and perspective seemed upset. The aperture was black, with a darkness almost material. That tenebrousness was indeed a positive quality, for it obscured such parts of the inner walls as ought to have been revealed, and actually burst forth like a smoke from its eon-long imprisonment, visibly darkening the sun as it slunk away into the shrunken and gibbous sky on flapping membranous wings. The odor arising from the newly opened depths was intolerable, and at length the quick-eared Hawkins thought he had heard a nasty slopping sound down there. Everyone listened, and everyone was listening still, when it lumbered slobberingly into sight, and gropingly squeezed its gelatinous green immensity through the black doorway into the tainted outside air of that poisoned city of madness. Poor Johannes' handwriting almost gave out when he wrote of this. Of the 6 men who never reached the ship, he thinks 2 perished of pure fright in that accursed instant. Can you make the sound? The thing cannot be described. There is no language of such abysms of shrieking and immemorial lunacy, such eldritch contradictions of all matter, force, and cosmic order. A mountain walked or stumbled. Gods! What wonder that across the earth a great architect went mad, and poor Wilcox raved with fever in that telepathic instant. The thing of the idols, the green, sticky spawn of the stars, had awakened to claim his own. The stars were right again, and what an age-old cult had failed to do by design, a band of innocent sailors had done by accident. After vigintillions of years, great Cthulu was loose again and ravening for delight. And oh my god, another freaking period ad! Dang, it was just getting good too. I was getting chilled. Whew. Alright, here we go. Three men were swept up by the flabby claws before anybody turned. God rest them, if there be any rest in the universe. They were Donovan, Guerrera, and Angstrom. Parker slipped as the other 3 were plunging frenziedly and attended to a few matters of food for himself and the laughing maniac by his side. He did not try to navigate after the first bold flight, for the reaction had taken something out of his soul. Then came the storm of April 2nd, and a gathering of the clouds about his consciousness. There is a sense of spectral whirling through liquid gulfs of infinity, of dizzying rides through reeling universes on a comet's tail, and of hysterical plunges from the pit to the moon, and from the moon back again to the pit, all livened by cachinnating chorus of the distorted, hilarious elder gods and the green, bat-winged mocking imps of Tartarus. Jeez! Out of that dream came rescue, the Vigilant, the Vice Admiral Court, the streets of Dunedin, and the long voyage back home to the old house by Egberg. He could not tell. They would think him mad. He would write of what he knew before death came, but his wife must not guess. Death would be a boon, if only it could not blot out the memories. That was the document I read, and now I have placed it in the tin box beside the bas-relief in the papers of Professor Engel. With it shall go this record of mine, this test of my own sanity, wherein is pieced together that which I hope may never be pieced together again. I have looked upon all that universe has to hold of horror, and even the skies of spring and the flowers of summer must ever afterward be poison to me. But I do not think my life will be long. As my uncle went, as poor Johansson went, so I shall go. I know too much, and the cult still lives. Cthulu still lives too, I suppose, again in that chasm of stone, which has shielded him since the sun was young. His accursed city is sunken once more, for the Vigilant sailed over the spot after April's storm, but his ministers on earth still bellow and prance and slay around the idol-capped monoliths in lonely places. He must have been trapped by the sinking whilst within his black abyss, or else the world would know by now and be screaming with fright and frenzy. Who knows the end? What has risen may sink, and what has sunk may rise. Loathsomeness waits and dreams in the deep, and decay spreads over the tottering cities of men. A time will come, and I must not and cannot think. Let me pray that, if I do not survive this manuscript, my executors may put caution before audacity, and see that it meets no other eye. Wait, that's the end! That's the end, guys! What the shit? D&D or book reading. We just read Call of Cthulhu. That was the end. Holy shit. Wow. We actually finished it pretty quickly. Dang. Oh, it's a book by H.P. Lovecraft. It's like his most well-known book. Wow, so that was really short. Wow. What do you guys think? Can we get cookies? Yeah, now we're on the Dunwich Horror. We can go to the table of contents. You guys can see what we have. So this is like a whole book. Let's see. There's no cover art, I guess. Yeah, so this is the book of the best of H.P. Lovecraft, blood-curdling tales of horror and the macabre. Anyway, so, the first one is Rats in the Walls, that's why I read that one first. Then The Picture in the House, The Outsider, Pigman's Model, In the Vault, The Silver Key, The Music of Eric Zan, The Call of Cthulhu, which we just read, The Dunwich Horror, The Whisperer in the Darkness, The Color Out of Space, The Haunter of the Dark, Thing on the Doorstep, Shadow over Innsmouth, The Dreams in the Witch House, The Shadow Out of Time, and some endnotes. A boob nose! Wait, do I even have them here? I'm not reading another one. I don't know what we're gonna do. I'm gonna... Yeah, I don't want to read another one. But I think I did get better at reading as it went on, so... I mean, we could do this again sometime. I could read another one in the future if you guys would like. Okay. I guess we can hang out for a little bit longer. I don't know what I'm gonna do though. Let me see. I'm gonna go back to another scene so I can do the redeem for fear. Enjoyed it a lot. Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it. It was my first time reading a story on stream. Wow, I look weird without the mustache now. Alright, oh, I can do the boob nose now. Oh, that's my mouth. How's that? Ah! Ah! Busted! Ah! Okay. You look hecka cute. Like, okay. What should I do now? Let's see. I'm gonna put a new display capture on here. Display capture 2. Ah! That's my whole desktop! Hold on. Yay! There you go. What was that noise? I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. No, I literally don't. I probably just made a weird noise. Okay, so... I don't know what to do. Not the default Windows wallpaper. Yeah, I have not really been on this computer much. Alright, what can we do, guys? I don't know. I really didn't expect to go. I mean, I guess it didn't really go too fast. Like, it was about average. So, yeah, about 2.5 hours. So I guess Google was right. Hello, Hita. The only one I fear is Junie. Marbles on stream. Marbles on stream needs an update. I don't know what I'm doing. Always with the updates. I know. I don't know. I don't know. Bruh, I like literally don't have anything downloaded on this computer anymore. Maybe I can download, should I play Us? I haven't played Us in a while. I'm downloading Musash. Awesome. Awesome. I don't think I've ever played Us on stream. Ba- blah, blah, ba- 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 you know what we could do? We could watch something. I think I have some videos that I had set aside to watch on stream. On stream. Let's see. We could watch Nyanner's origin story. Since she's like about the old ones and the Eldritch stuff. Or would that be weird, watching another VTuber's stuff on stream? I haven't seen it. Darn you, Fortnite. Maybe, would you guys like to watch that? We can watch Nanner's origin story. It's done by Merriweather Comics. Or maybe you guys have already seen it. Okay. Oh god, is there gonna be an ad? Okay, there's not an ad. Are you related to Nyanas? I am not! I am not related to Nyanas. I'm just a yokai. I'm an umbrella yokai. I'm not an eldritch being. And how dubbed you, my elder sister.
永遠に広がる宇宙空間の中には全てが存在した。その冷たき空間の中には私の存在も始まった。暗闇の中に一人で浮かんでいた。私は指導をもらった。私のたった一つの生きがい。何を教えてくれたの？
No, not your internet. We're watching Nyanner's origin story.
どうして何の意味があるの？覚えられない。朝私の記憶は乱れている。どこにいてしまったの？私は誰なの？何をするつもりだった？何かが欠けている。自分以外の何かが必要。何かが何でも。
Yeah, Nanners is supposed to be of like Eldritch origin. So I thought it'd be appropriate, and I've been wanting to watch this. It's done by Merriweather Comics.
私はにゃん。ゴロ。見つけた。これが種子の世界。どうすれば。 何よ。そして地球とその住民に混沌が訪れる。私知らないの。
Her voice acting is crazy in this. Didn't even sound like her.
何千年も私はゴロと二人きりで荒野を歩いた。人間の絶望と苦しみを収穫しながら、どうしてこんなことをしているか必死に思い出そうとした。私の記憶は乱れた放射に曇れ、授けられた指導しか見えなかった。考えずに適当に、私は指導に従ってずっとその意味を知らずに、そしてある日、
あなたって伝説なの？
誰？
それに人間の言葉まで喋れるようになってる。すごい。
あんたは誰？
私なんか気にしないで。怖い触手の雲さん。私はこの惑星の魔界から来た
Who it is?
アイアンノースだよ。
はあ、私は指導がある。ほっといて。
本当にほっといていいの？友達が欲しそうな顔してる。
私は混沌の明かりを照らしている。友達はいらない。
わかったわかった。それは任せるわ、破壊と苦しみの雲さん。でも忠告しておくよ。同じく悪魔として。この世界はなかなか壊れてくれないんだよ。
結局あの子の言う通りだった。この世界は全宇宙の中でも特別だった。私
Look who it is now. Yeah, they're gonna do. He's gonna do all their backstories apparently, and they're gonna be connected, as you can see, which is really neat. Oh, there's Bebe.
疲れてる。何の意味があったのか理由もわからない。
Maybe that's not Bebe.
どうして
Her hair is white, so that's why I assumed.
どこにいる？
It looks like Nyanners though. I don't know. It's hard to tell.
誰のことを呼んでいる？
ニャン、聞こえるか？
光が。あなたは
Who's that?
誰？
俺だよ。
Oh. Yeah, so I guess that was Nyanners. I don't know where Bebe is. Her hair is white! But now it's pink.
私を見つけるためゴロは必死にこの世界を探し続けた。長い間は手がかり一つもなかったけど、氷の中から私の最後の
I'm sorry, 魔女。
あぶり出された。2000年もの間、私はシベリアの凍っている海の中に閉じ込められた。人類はとっくに進んだ。 私のことを忘れた。神の御事も女帝も力を得て、そしていずれ国の滅ぼしを見届けた。人類はかつて拝んだ粘土心臓のように世界を好きな風に曲げた。月さえ人間の手から逃れなかった。そして私は起きた。ゴロと共に二人とも古代魔法をほぼ使えなくなったり、この世界を探検して人間の甘くて狂ってる生き方を味わった。そして味わうたびに私の記憶と力が少しずつ戻ってきた。いずれ私の指導を果たせるようになる。私は明かりを照らす。
ジロジロ見るなおい、このクソガキ。
ああ、少しだけはいつも通り。もう疲れたの。ゴロ、アニメーションが見たいの。この人の正気を吸い込んだ。用は済んだ。
No, not an ad!
Win at work by communicating effectively.
Playing Konosuba FD? What is FD?
ゴロ。この生き物、あなたに似ている。はあ、本当に似ているよ。似合うよね。そっくりでしょ。何これ、面白すぎる。にゃ笑えるわ。数日が数ヶ月になり、数ヶ月が数年に、そして数年が何十年にもなった。人間の正気を吸い込むことさえ面倒くさくなった。そしてある日はもうやめてしまった。何時間も見てた海外 VHS の中にあったアニメーションはアニメと呼ばれることなり、そしていつの間にどこでもあるようになった。インターネットの誕生で人類は集合精神へ一歩近づいた。私はアメリカへ引っ越し、新しい友達ができた。悪魔とリッチと狼とドラゴンと AI と何かの宇宙人的なロボットっぽいの。とても巨乳の。でもそれはともかく、私とゴロはいい生活を作り上げた。ああ、それはもちろん昔から授けられた指導のために人間の正気を吸い込んだりすることもいいけど、他の好きなことができた。例えば歌を歌ったり。 I finally understand the love you had for me was only just secondhand, dancing the night away. はあ、まったく時間が全然湧いてこないわ。サックスも出たのに誰も気づかなかった。私すごかったの？嘘つかないで。
Aw, Macho, we're just watching a video right now.
私何億年も宇宙に浮かんできたのに、体勢の前に立つことだけであんなに怖いなんて。にゃんにゃん。何を言ってる？そうね、ファンなんだっけ。そいつを洗脳してくれたの助かったわね。マネージャーとしてはできるやつかも。
おい、俺の言ってること一つも聞いてねえのかよ、このビッチが。今夜までやらなきゃいけねえって言ったはずだろ。サボってんのか、頭どうかしてんのか。は？
ごめんなさい。
もうこんちきしょい。 けな。
この人正気よ。
どうしたんやナズ。
アイアンマウス。
あなたってあれをする気でしょ。正気を吸い込むやつずっと前からやってるし、私たち以外に誰も気づかないから
Is this them really voicing it? That's what I'm
覚
wondering.
えていないかもしれないけど、私はニャンナンスのことをよく覚えてるよ。その破壊と混沌の覚えているの。人間の苦しんでる姫、あなたの明かりの燃料だったでしょ。あなたは明かりを照らしてなるべきものを簡単になれる。それか、そんなことを忘れて私たちと一緒にいればみんな友達でしょ。この惑星もあなたの居場所になってきた。過去なんて忘れちゃえ。前へ進もう。
マウスちゃん。空気を吸いに行く。
私に声を上げるな。このケムクジャラ宇宙人。とにかくあのスタッフさんの5分だけ地獄へ爆発に送り出すわ。またねゴロー。
アザトース、命の終止。すべてがバカみたい。私が明かりを照らしてすべてを破壊するというの。この世界、私の頑張ったこと、出会った人、楽しめた時も、私の友達もすべてが無意味というの。この世界がアザトースをまた数百万年の生かせるための食事なの。そんなのつまらない。お前は混沌とその生み出される楽しさを入れないというのなら、私がこの世界をもらう。アザトース。
キャッチ。
は、
私の番号を入れたよ。気楽に連絡してね。あなたがいつもブツブツ言ってる宇宙の話とか聞きたいし、それにやってほしい友達もいっぱいいるよ。
アイアンマン。永遠に広がる宇宙空間の中には全てが存在した。そしてその冷たき空間の中には私の存在も始まった。私の生きがいを忘れてしまったけど、一つは確信した。混沌と災害を呼び出すことが私の運命だった。私はアニメを見て、朝5時に寝て、ゲーム配信して、そして好きな混沌を呼び出してやるわ。古き宇宙の神がどう言おうと私は止められたりしない。この世界を台無しにさせないわ。バカ老人め。ここの混沌は私のもの。
Neko Nyami-kan.
人も希望も絶望も全部は私だけのもの。私、一線の顔を持つ暗黒の使者はこの世界を自分のものと命じる。
Interesting. It'll be interesting to see the other origin stories. Wow, so they did do the voices. That's crazy. Wow, that's insane. Crazy. Alright, well, I guess it's time to say goodnight. They sounded amazing. They really did. That was insane. Like, for real. They sounded so good.
Who are
Crazy. Alrighty. Let's see who's online. I tire. Bang, 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 bang. Bang, 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 bang. Bang, 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 bang. Bam, 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 bam. Bam, 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 bam. Dun, 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 dun. Alright. I think I'm gonna raid Tauntaun. Wait. Oh, look who's online. Iron Mouse. With 9.4K. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, everybody, I will see you guys next week sometime. I don't know what we'll be doing, but I'll be here. Is the command gone? Sheesh, I don't know. Why is it not working? Why didn't it work? Oh, well, pfft. Don't worry about it. Yeah, weird. Maybe the bots aren't in here. Well, Stream Elements is in here. Seems like Stream Labs isn't in here. It might be under Stream Labs. Anyway, you guys be nice to Tauntaun. I will see you guys next week. Have a wonderful weekend. Love you all so much. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Fucking light bulb.
I think it's a wraith. I think it's a wraith.
A wraith? Hello, Jeannie. Thank you so much for the raid. How are you? Welcome, raiders. My name is